Hey guys, and welcome to the fourth devlog of The Chamber, a small top-down shooter I've been working on. Since the last video, I've been focused on reworking the weapon mechanic to allow for Bert to have 2 active spells, as well as switching these spells out for new ones. And I ran into more major bugs than I have during the entire project. The first step was to change Bert's sprite so that he could hold the readied spell in his hands without looking like an idiot. This required halfway redoing all of his animations, which wasn't bad, took like 5 minutes. Next, I needed some spells. I decided to take the gem-looking thing out of the top of Bert's staff to use as the readied spell in Bert's hands, so for each spell I created a similar sprite to accompany it. I ended up with 9 spells, completely ready to implement. Ice Bolt, Ball of Frost, Firebolt, Fireball, Mustard Gas, Divine Intervention using that cross I made in the first video, and an unnamed lightning spell, Telekinesis, and an unnamed poison spell. The great thing about my weapon script is that, because it was meant to be used for several different types of weapons, it was effortless to adapt it to work the way it needed for the new combat. I changed the player's script to be the one searching for clicks to make multiple active weapons easy, and it was done. I had 2 spells that I could fire independently from one another. With a spell on either side of Bert, it finally annoyed me that Bert's entire sprite flipped. It took just a quick reassignment to flip just the head, but now his shirt doesn't say I half the time. Next, I made the player's movement affect the accuracy of the player's projectiles. When the player stands still, the projectiles will go exactly where the player clicked. If the player is moving, it'll use the original inaccuracy value. Now, what's the point of different spells if they all act the same? I needed to differentiate Firebolt and Ice Bolt, so I added Splash to the Firebolt, which was the most difficult thing I've done since the project began. At first I tried to instantiate an explosion object that would damage all enemies it collided with. I actually can't remember what was wrong with this, but I ended up running through all enemies and calculating the damage using distance. This does mean that even enemies on the opposite side of the map take a small amount of damage, and checking every entity can't be very efficient, but it got the job done, so I left it. And I made the Ice Bolt slow down the enemies to make it a little more unique. And now for the other big thing I did, swapping weapons. This wasn't too difficult, but it took the longest time because it requires several scripts to be working together, and I have no idea what I'm doing. The next thing was to set up all those spells that I hadn't already. The ones I got done were Fireball, Ball of Frost, Telekinesis, and the Mustard Gas spell, which I ended up calling Sulfur Cloud. A little more magic-y. Speaking of the Sulfur Cloud / Mustard Gas spell, it required that I change the projectile script to be a trigger rather than a collider. This would allow the mustard gas particles to act like a cloud, and damaging more than one enemy per particle. This did, however, cause a problem with all the projectiles colliding with the crab, and I eventually had to scrap the crab's ability to dodge the player's projectiles because it was creating such a big issue. The final major thing I did was create indicators for the cooldown of Bert's spells. At first I just copied the health bar and added some code in there to make it work, and it worked pretty good. But when I got on Unity the next day, the left one had completely broken. Every time I swapped spells, the edge values got changed to nan, which would normally be returned when the program tried to divide by 0. After a few hours of trying to figure out what went wrong, I found out that it's a bug within Unity, so there was almost nothing I could do about it. To circumnavigate this, I swapped out the progress bars for these orb things that display the spell's readiness through the alpha value of the color. I'm quite happy with the result though, it could use some improving. To finish off this video, I created a power button that doesn't work. I just never bothered to test it. And then I built it to upload to itch. This is when I found out that WebGL builds of Unity 2020 don't work on itch. I had to upgrade to 2020 in an attempt to fix that issue with the progress bar, but that didn't fix it and I couldn't downgrade, so I just had to upload an application. So if you'd like to play it, you'll have to download it. And that's it. Subscribe if you'd like to see more. Later, nerds.